Hey, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Guess what we're doing right now?
Is it another Readathon?
Sure is.
So we had testimony today.
Yes, but there's something else I need to talk about first.
Okay.
This is not going to be a long episode. I just want to be clear with folks about that. I'm going to record a longer episode tomorrow, and that will dig deeper into the meat of the Jen McCabe testimony. But we're going to talk about that briefly today. We're going to have a couple of other things to go over with you.
Okay. All right.
So one of the things we're going to talk about today, Kevin, I want to mention this first before we get into it. I'm going to tell you my theory of what happened to John O'Keefe based on some of the data I've seen in court, okay?
Okay.
So let's get into it.
We've cleared up the mystery of the rock. Well, no.
No.
No, I haven't cleared the mystery of the rock, but it's been handled in court.
It's been handled in court. Judge Cannoni said before testimony, I believe yesterday.
Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday. The jurors need to disregard the rock. The lawyers stipulate it wasn't there on January 28th, 29th, 2022. And the mystery of how it got there is still not solved. Not solved. Okay. Another thing that happened yesterday that we did not talk about because it happened as we were taping was there was a short hearing after the day of testimony about the ARCA witnesses.
Right.
And it got ugly. Got really, really ugly. Hank Brennan got up and very angrily argued not only shouldn't the ARCA witnesses be allowed to present their new testing that he's been trying to keep out, they should not even be able to present their prior testing because of all of the things he describes as discovery violations by the defense, okay?
Right. This is like the third time, right? They've had a voir dire or some sort of
hearings. We've had multiple hearings about ARCA,
and
the second voir dire was on Monday. Bev Cannoni, Alessi started getting up and arguing this, and Bev Cannoni interrupted him, was basically like, sit down. It was really weird. But she, again, excoriated the defense for what she called multiple violations, which as a viewer and as somebody who reads what all the lawyers write about this, even lawyers who don't take a side on this, nobody agrees that these violations exist except for like anti-free Karen Read people and Judge Cannoni, who seems to have really misinterpreted some very basic concepts about the relationship between ARCA and the defense. But the bottom line is she said to him, "You're gonna win this, Mr. Alessi, so sit down."
I'm sick of hearing about it.
But there are some things I need to say to you first. And it got really ugly. But the bottom line is ARCA is in fully old testing, new testing, and the relief she's giving the prosecution is saying, I'm going to give you a long leash when you do your cross-examination. So I expect to see ugly Hank Brennan back, mean Hank Brennan, when he's cross-examining these guys. And if you saw his cross-examination of him in the voir dire, it was mean.
Yeah. And I believe that she said the reason she is just going to let ARCA do what they need to do is because the most important thing are the rights of the defendant.
It's not the only reason she said it, but yes.
Well, she did cite that as one of the reasons for allowing it to go forward, and I think that that's right. I mean,
Alessi also pointed out, by the way, that she doesn't have any jurisdiction to decide whether or not they're in or out because of discovery violations because they didn't actually violate the statute. And she said, I agree.
I agree, yes. Reversible error was all over that. Okay.
100%.
Interesting, but also not just the decision, which is very important to the defense, but the tone of it.
Yeah, really strange. And that cross-examination is going to be ugly. But I will say, from what I saw on Monday, Daniel Wolf in particular, Rentschler was only up there for a very short time. Daniel Wolf can take it. He can take it, and he can take it with a smile.
It's Dr. Wolf from ARCA. Yeah.
Which is rare, but he can. So today, something really weird happened during the lunch break or right after the lunch break, okay? What happened was I kept seeing these reports from reporters saying that the courtroom had been cleared except for the legal teams, the immediate families, and Judge Cannoni.
So the family of Karen Read and of John O'Keefe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there were
their attorneys. Interesting combination.
And her. And I was thinking for a second, like, is there going to be a mistrial? Has the state, like, what could it possibly be that affects both families?
Like if this were a civil case, you'd be like, they've got an agreement. They're coming to some sort of conclusion, and the judge wants to take the temperature of the. Yeah, okay.
Another option was that maybe there was a security issue or something like that. That's what I was thinking.
Right? They wanted to go over something like
right.
Someone's bringing something more than just a rock.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So a couple things happened that reporters noted. Christina Rex, Ted Daniel. At one point, the Reeds came out of the courtroom. Everybody was asked to go to a different floor, by the way, because this courtroom's on like the second floor or first floor. I don't really know the geography. But at some point, Paul O'Keefe, John O'Keefe's brother, went into the DA's office, which is in that building, and then came out and I guess didn't look happy. But the result is Paul O'Keefe was moved. Now, you know where he usually sits in the front row of those people that are facing the jury and the defense table. He was moved to the second row. So speculation and rumors say that he was chastised for his behavior in court in some way. And it had to do with families' reactions, their affect, something like that. But he was moved along with his wife, who looks very unhappy, by the way, to the second row of that behind his mother. Okay, which was strange.
Yeah. So in the past, though, the old jury said that they felt like intimidation just because of the setup. It's sort of, I don't want to say in the round, but
in closing arguments, they felt intimidated.
Their position sort of eye to eye with the jury, where they're sitting, and so stuff can be communicated verbally and non-verbally. But Karen Rito says she could hear him grumbling or whatever.
Talking to her, making comments to her. Also, it was Brian Albert's presence on the in that seating spot that intimidated the jury.
Right. But no one has said specifically what exactly happened.
Right. But you just know that he was moved after this really strange private hearing with the judge in the courtroom and the family members.
And I guess does Bev not have chambers where you could go and do that?
No, there's actually no chambers behind this. This is the small courtroom in the courthouse.
Yeah.
She walks in the main door like everyone else. It's a weird little courtroom.
Okay.
All right. So another thing that came up today that was mentioned that people found strange, but I think I have a sense of what it might be. When Jen McCabe got on the stand, she spoke about this pre-testimony, and it was like, how many proceedings have you been in before? I believe it was at the beginning of her cross-examination with Alan Jackson. And how many times have you met with or talked with a DA? And she said including the Zoom call I had last night that the court wanted, and then she was cut off. Objection, and she was cut off. And there's been a ton of speculation, like what is it they could have Zoomed about the night before her testimony that the court wanted to happen?
That the court wanted to happen?
Yes.
She didn't misspeak. She didn't say the DA wanted this.
No, it was the court wanted a Zoom call. And applying the judge was on it, but it doesn't mean that the judge was on it. I mean, it could have been the court officer or whatever. I have a couple of guesses, a couple of theories that I want to float by you.
Go for it.
One is security. Like, we want you to walk in a certain way. We want you to be aware of X, Y, Z, something along those lines.
Sure, it doesn't take a whole Zoom call. This Zoom call could have been an email, but sure.
Second, there's something that Jen McCabe is not allowed to talk about on the stand explicitly that was the basis of a lot of her testimony last time. Remember what that was?
Harassment.
She would cry about how this case has ruined her life. She's been harassed. She's, implying that it was Karen Reed, sort of behind it. They're not allowed to talk about the Turtle Boy case at all. And she is a witness in the Turtle Boy case. And there was a motion precluding witnesses in that case from discussing that case in this trial. And that technically is that case. So she can't talk about it. So it could have been that. Could have just been a strong reminder. This is an off-limits topic. And to be fair, she has not mentioned it at all. All right? So Jen McCabe's testimony, I'll just tell you my impressions. Jen McCabe is doing very well against Alan Jackson. Alan Jackson is also doing very well. It's going to be a question of what the jury picks up from it. There have been some very interesting moments, such as when he asked her about her first FBI interview.
No, he didn't say FBI.
He didn't.
He said like a different agency.
That isn't the state police.
That isn't the state police.
Isn't the Canton police.
And that you could be arrested for lying to them specifically.
That's right.
Like anybody with television knows you're talking about the FBI.
Right.
But okay.
And there was a point at which he described somebody who was at that meeting as an agent.
As an agent and had to withdraw.
He got objected to, and she said, "Be careful of your language. Be careful of the words you use." And he said, "Well, what I meant was an agent as in belonging to an agency."
Yeah.
Which again, screams FBI. So
sure, yeah, they know. Now they're wondering why, but okay.
I'm hoping the jury picked it up because remember, the jury last time didn't understand who had hired ARCA. And if he now says an independent law enforcement agency that wasn't the state police hired you, they are maybe able to draw that line.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Yep.
And then he also caught her she admitted to lying to the FBI, and she said it was a mistake.
Yeah.
But that she, they rolled up on her. They literally physically rolled up on her. And she said, "I need a few minutes. Come back in 10 minutes. I need to brush my teeth. I need to get ready." And in that time, she told them when they came back, they immediately asked her, "Have you talked to anybody since we were last here, like half an hour ago or whatever?" She said, "I talked to 2 people, my husband, Matt, and Kerry Roberts." And later, apparently she had to call them back and clarify. She had actually talked to 5 people. She says the witness advocate, but she called the DA's office. Mm-hmm. She called Peggy O'Keefe, and she called Brian Albert. Mm-hmm. So that came up. That was a little bit of a big moment. And now we're just getting to, in the testimony, her inconsistencies of the I hit him, times that it became part of her story much later, not during the grand jury, not during the initial police interviews. And they're at that part now. She is handling this with a lot of grace and calmness in a way that I'm both surprised by, but not surprised by, because she's had a year to be told, like, this is what you need to do.
To get mentally there.
But she is not getting rattled. At one point, he caught her in a serious inconsistency, and she said, in this tone, she's like, we're just arguing over silly little words at this point. And he got it. He was like, words matter. And he got chastised. So he's coming off as more aggressive, which he needs to be, because he needs to make these points about these inconsistencies. But she's handling it well. I'll just give her credit for that. She's handling her demeanor is very, very good.
Okay.
So we're going to talk more about the substance of Jen McCabe's testimony on tomorrow's episode. But in the meantime, I want to tell you what I've been thinking about a theory of this case.
Okay.
Because there's one thing that has troubled you for a while about the data. John O'Keefe's, final health data point being in the mid-30s minute-wise, 1236 or whatever. But we know that he took these steps shortly before that last health data.
Well, can I explain what my concern is here? Or I'm trying to reconcile that the data shows that he took, whatever it was,
36 steps 85
feet to get into the house, and then there's no more active data coming in.
Data, yep.
So within 2 minutes of if he went in 2 to 3 minutes later, he's dead.
Yes.
And I just feel like, unless you're set up, ready to ambush him, and it's premeditated, and the dog and everything, it just seems unlikely. I think a lot of people thought drunken party, something started happening, people started pushing. It was a fight, got out of hand, and then everybody panicked.
Yes.
And there just doesn't seem to be enough time for that to happen within 2 minutes.
Right.
Doesn't mean that that's not what happened, but I'm just saying, okay, I have to kind of reconcile that with what we have for facts. So what do you think about this? How does this fit into your idea?
The one thing I want to mention about his phone is it does also show he went up some stairs. Mm-hmm. So I just want to say with a caveat that I may be slightly off location-wise, because it could be upstairs, or maybe his phone went upstairs and he did not.
Yeah.
But my new theory actually takes Jen McCabe out of the equation of knowing that anything happened to him until way later. So this is what I think from the data. The garage has come up a couple of times, so I'm wondering if the defense is thinking this too. One thing that we know that has been testified to is that Chloe was kept away from partygoers because she wasn't good with people. We also learned today, by the way, or I learned today for the first time, that Chloe is part Malinois. Do you know what those dogs are? She's a German Shepherd and Malinois. These are 2 kinds of police dogs. Malinois is also used by the military. They can run up walls, jump 30 feet. They're incredibly aggressive, and they can only be owned by experienced, trained people. That is the Malinois, okay? So she has these 2 very complex kinds of dog. We know that she was kept away from partygoers, all right? Jen McCabe says that she went into the front door of the house, which is that middle door in the middle of the lawn, which I have questions about because she parked in the driveway, and no one in New England uses their front door if they are parked by the side door, right? But she says she went in the front door. John O'Keefe allegedly went in that side door or toward the side door, okay? And actually his phone data, if you believe the white circle that's closer to the house, kind of sends him in that direction diagonally, okay? So here's what I think may have happened.
Okay, and I'm starting to think of something myself. Go ahead.
Another data point that we know that has been testified to several times is that Brian Higgins and Brian Albert were away from other partygoers ostensibly because Brian Albert wanted to show Brian Higgins some pictures. They were looking at pictures in the family room, but then there's been testimony that they went, quote, upstairs to look at pictures. And I've always thought, why do they want Alberts and why are they trying to give them an excuse for not being with other people for a period of minutes? So this is what I think may have happened. And I'm going to use the garage as my setting because it makes some sense. And the garage door keeps being talked about right now. And today Jen McCabe pretended like she had seen the garage door for the first time, a house she's seen for 40 years. Anyway, if he walked up to the house and Higgins and Albert were in the garage, perhaps they were discussing whatever beef Higgins seemed to have with John O'Keefe at the bar, where he got really hot. I've seen that video like 50 times now, and I've seen a cleared up version of it. He gestures toward John O'Keefe like he's going to swing an arm in that direction, and then he gets pulled back by Chris Albert, and Brian Albert comes to talk to him. It's a very strange moment. If they got back to the house and they immediately started talking about whatever this was that was going on between him and John that he felt was going on, probably having to do with Karen stuff. If they're in the garage or wherever the dog is, because they want to have a private conversation, he walks in and instead of going into the party, goes and talks to them, whether it's upstairs, the garage, wherever Chloe was kept. Scuffle happens quickly. Voices are raised. Maybe it's not even physical, but voices are raised and there's posturing. Chloe attacks him, baits his arm, and during that melee, he falls backwards and hits his head. This puts him away from everybody except for those two men, right?
Yeah.
Those two men are like, fuck. So perhaps they just think that he's going to be fine, or they don't know, but they lean him up against the wall or whatever they do so that vomit ends up going down in his pants or whatever. I think that it's possible that no one else in that house knew what happened until all the kids were gone and only core people were left. And by core people who were there until 1:30 or 2 in the morning, I mean the homeowners, the Alberts, the McCabes, Jen McCabe and Matt McCabe. She drove home, Julie Nagel and Sarah Robinson, the nurse. So they were still there, but they might have been hanging out with the sons because they were friends with Albert's sons. They may have been in the basement or something. But those core people, Higgins, the McCabes, and the Alberts, they seem to be the ones who've concocted a plan. And I don't even think it was a Karen plan at that point. I think it was a what the fuck do we do plan, which may have included bringing him out onto the lawn.
Right.
But this takes Colin kind of out of the picture. Actually,
Colin could have been a third person in the garage.
Could have been, but he also could have just not been there, and they may have just been trying to protect him, saying he wasn't there because he has other legal issues. Who knows?
Yeah.
But Jen McCabe continued to text John O'Keefe like, "Are you there? What's going on? What's going on?" This makes those texts make sense until like 12:50.
Yeah.
Because if he came in the house
being told the story
and
that
Karen
she still
was
believes,
gone,
yeah.
She's legitimately like, "Where the fuck are you? Like, why haven't you come in the house or whatever?"
But what about the tip that all this went down in the basement?
It could have been the basement. It could have been, and then that would make the phone going up the 3 flights of stairs make sense because it would have been one of like maybe Brian Albert who brought his phone upstairs. But the thing to remember about Brian Albert is he was a Boston police detective at a high level. He was not a beat cop. He was not an inexperienced cop. He helped solve the Boston Strangler case. He understands how to open, close a phone if somebody's face is there apparently too, and he knows how to turn off certain settings. He does. To maybe stop the health data from recording at a certain point or to stop phone motion from it. He knows how to do that. That is an important fact to remember, okay? You don't need to be a tech genius to know that. You just need to be an experienced cop who's traced people with their phones. So this is what I think may have happened, and I think this lets Jen McCabe off the hook for those subsequent calls and texts until like 12:50. Does not let her off the hook on the cover-up that happened as a result of this the next day, or maybe they all talked about it later that night. What the fuck do we do? But if John O'Keefe was in the garage, finally, the Ford Edge thing makes sense. Because if there was a Ford Edge in that garage or in the driveway right in front of the garage, it was right there. The Ford Edge could have been transporting him from the garage to that spot on the lawn, which would explain why it was there. They could have put him in the trunk or in the back seat.
And why no one saw people carrying a dead body.
Absolutely.
Because if the car is right there, you could put it in the car and then park it and just slide it right out.
That's right. And it would block the view of that from the neighbor's camera. So what do you think about my theory?
Well, I mean, I think it sort of accounts for like the number of steps that we know were taken. And that would also explain the swiftness of why it wasn't an hour later after everybody partying in the basement that a fatal attack happened. So I don't know. It's a good theory. It sort of differs from what we've been led to believe from the whistleblower on the inside. And we don't know if this is what the FBI was thinking as their theory, but maybe
this happened in the basement. Maybe it did. I think it happened somewhere where other partygoers did not know he had arrived and they were able to keep it isolated.
Yeah. I mean, all we know, judging by the evidence, suggests that he was punched in the face and that he was bitten by a dog on the arm and that he split the back of his head open in an incapacitating blow.
Right. Which also maybe caused the black eyes. I think that the pathologists say that sometimes, but we do know that something violent happened. He hit his head in the back, and if he fell on something and did it in something in the garage or on a barbell in the basement, this means Jen McCabe did not know he was there at all. and it had come in at all. And that makes so much more sense to me. I still think she massaged the timeline. I still think all of that later when she knew what had happened. She wanted to keep her daughter out of it, et cetera, because her daughter had picked up Colin, yada, yada, yada. But it makes sense of the data to me.
Okay.
What was your other thought that you had?
Well, just thinking that, if everybody does use the front door, if that's common, then for John to enter the side door would be surprising to a dog who is unfriendly with strangers, coming in an unfamiliar door, being in a certain place. So if this all starts with an attack from the dog, then I could see that happening.
Yes.
But then it's sort of like hard to be like, okay, they
then
pull the dog off, and
yeah.
then it's a fist fight, and I don't know. But there is a world in which Jen McCabe is telling her truth.
For those minutes.
For those minutes,
yes.
and for what she thinks happened, and doesn't mean she's not carrying water for somebody else.
I don't think she's telling the truth anymore about those minutes.
Yeah,
but she was telling the truth about those minutes initially, that she tried to text him, whatever. She was lying about other stuff, don't get me wrong. Okay. But that part being true anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's my theory, and they'll be back tomorrow with a longer episode about Jen McCabe's The Substance of Her Testimony. I'll be talking to Mel about that. You can join us if you want. If you're busy, that's okay. But that's it for today's Readathon.
All right.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Partners in Crime Media.